Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Hibbinger here. I'm getting ready to read part 2 of chapter 3 of The Flint Heart. The gentleman's name being Nicodemus Nestor Fossam Perk, F.R.S., British Museum, he said. Well, let him go perk somewhere else, said Mrs. Jago. Us haven't got no use for him. Of course, I can't again go to waste my time with the man, said Mr. Jago, but since tomorrow's a holiday, there's not for me to do. I shall just help him a bit. That old grave, as he've found under fur, have never been broken open by the look of it, and nobody but him would have found it, for 'tis right in the midst of the prickliest fuzz bush ever I comed across. But tomorrow I be going to break it open, just for to see if anything be there. And no harm's done since the day be a holiday. More fool you, said Mrs. Jago. But when the next day came, Mr. Billy put on his working clothes and went. Charles, being the most sensible of the children, went with him to help carry his furze hook and pick and spade and basket, and Ship went along, just for fun. They reached the spot, but there was no professor to be seen. He had meant to be there, but on the way he had come upon the most interesting location and sat down to contemplate it. By and by he had filled 3 notebooks with ideas for a new book that would explain in a new way how Dartmoor came to be, and he was so excited by these new ideas that he stayed there too long, caught a cold, and went back to the inn to recover, recalling never once his appointment with Billy Jago. Meanwhile, Charles and his father began to cut through the furzies and hack away at the peat and heather. They dislodged the stones and eventually threw open the old grave. Since it was old Fudd's grave and he was a Stone Ager, they didn't find any bronze there, and it would have been better if they had found nothing at all, but Billy did find something which he slipped into his pocket. The gentleman might like this here funny old stone, he said. 'Tis just a piece of flint, father, said Charles. Of course 'tis. Any fool can see that. And his father, who was usually such a kindly man, spoke so roughly that Charles backed away in astonishment. But you won't be surprised, because you've already guessed that Flint Heart in Billy Jago's waistcoat pocket was bubbling away with wickedness, delighted to be at work again. If Charles had happened to look to the southwest at that moment, he would have seen the thunder spirit laughing over the edge of the black cloud. But Charles was staring at his father and missed the sight. Billy loaded his pipe, lighted it, and then said to his son, Pick up the tools and carry him home. All of them, father? Yes, all of them. You heard me. You ain't deaf, are you? Then he strode off, leaving Charles almost as still as the granite stones of Fudd's grave. Soon the boy's astonishment turned to tears, because he loved his father exceedingly and was grieved to see him so suddenly changed. And he dried his eyes, got the tools, and with Ship dragging the pick along with his teeth, the 2 of them started for home. They made slow progress, lugging all that gear, and it was dark before they got home to Merripit. But it could not be called merry any more, for the Flint Heart had arrived and set to work once again. When Charles came in, he found his mother pacing the kitchen in a rage, and John sitting by the fire, nursing a black eye and trying not to look astonished. Mary was getting the twins to bed. Teddy was under the table, shivering with fear, and Frank was hiding behind the storage bench. Unity was wondering, and the baby was sound asleep. His mother turned to Charles at once. It's all the fault of that wretch of a man, no doubt, she said. I suppose he'd have made his £10, and now he feels too grand and fine for his own home and his wife and children. Do please give me something to eat, said Charles. I'm terribly hungry. Father left me to drag home all the tools, and if it weren't for Ship, I should never have made it in. Who was this here man? his mother asked as she got something to eat. I should think 'twas old Scratch himself from the way your father's going on. He's bewitched, and so sure's I'm alive. Nobody came near us, said Charles with his mouth full. We dug and found nothing but a bit of flint with a hole in it. And then, sudden as a flash of lightning, Father turned on me and spoke as he's never spoke before, and ordered me to bring home all the tools, and went off without me. By the looks of you all, he hasn't no better when he got home. He come shouting out for his dinner, Teddy said, and when Mother said 'twasn't ready, he said it ought to be. Then John stood up for Mother, and Father knocked him edgewise over the fender. Just look at his eye. Then Frank and I ran out, 'cause we thought it would be our turn next. When we come back, he and Mother was having a pretty set to, wasn't you, Mother? I think he's gone mad, or else the pixies are having a game with him, said Charles. As a rule, said Teddy, when Mother and Father have words, Mother gets the best of it. Don't you, Mother? Only this time Father got the best of it. He ate all the tidbits of dinner, and then he went off because he said he wanted to pluck a crow with Mr. French down in the valley. He said he didn't see why Mr. French should be the leading man in Post Bridge. And he wasn't going to stand it. Goodness knows what'll happen next. At that very moment, a terrible noise broke down by the garden gate. Men were shouting and dogs were barking. And then there was a crash, and Chip ran out to see. But the dogs and Charles ran out to see who the men were. Mrs. Jago stayed where she was, as did John and the rest of the children. He was quite pleased, was Mr. Jago, but he didn't show pleasure in the old and kindly fashion. He stomped in, slapped his leg, and declared that he had done a good stroke of business. I met old Bassett going down the road, and I offered him a bit more for that field of his than French offered, and now I've got me a rich meadow that I've been wanting for many years. After that, Mr. Jago called for his supper and didn't strike anybody, nor did he talk to anybody but John. We'll soon wake this place up, he said. If we get to work and harden our hearts against all their nonsense, we'll come out at the top of them all by next year. Then he explained to John a number of horrid ideas that had occurred to him. They were not exactly the sort of ideas that had occurred to Phut when he had the flint heart. Then Mary said, Where are we to get a present from? Charles asked everyone for ideas, and then all, except the twins, who never spoke, made speeches. I wonder, said Unity, if big brother Charles had not better go to the Pixies for Father's present. And all the children said, Hear, hear. I think, said Charles, that Unity has made the cleverest and most practical speech of the meeting. I will do my best. We've none of us ever seen a pixie, but we all know very well that there are such people. Tomorrow evening I'll go alone to the Pixies' Holt. I hope I may have the luck to see one and speak to him, and if he'll be so good as to listen, something may come out of it. With that, meeting broke up, but not before Mary had proposed a vote of thanks to Charles for chairing the meeting and for what he had promised to do.